Sir, I am so thrilled to have you on the America Happens Network. I deeply admire you. You are one. I mean, I've seen your interviews, and I just heard you talking to a gentleman. Your honesty is on a different level. You're not playing any politics, obviously. So tell me, what are the things that concern you right now that are happening in this country and happening around the world?
Well, I think there are three things that I can point to. First of all, whatever is happening anywhere in the world, nothing is more important than what's happening in the United States. Right now, we have open borders. We have more than 52 million people inside our country who were not born here. And that's probably a conservative number because we're not sure how many people we've got in this country as it is. We're trying to go forward to an election, and we know there will be massive voter fraud. People will come in who are illegally here in the United States, even aliens who are legally here, and they will be allowed to vote, and that's wrong. But we know that's coming. And the criminality that is growing and developing in the country is frightening. The Justice Department releases criminals onto the streets on a routine basis. This has to stop. If we're truly concerned about the United States and its people, we ought to be preeminently concerned about what happens here first. Now, just as a quick example, a couple of days ago, 700 National Guardsmen from Tennessee were deployed to go to the Middle East. Eastern Tennessee has been destroyed by this hurricane called Helene. Where is the Tennessee National Guard going? It's going to the Middle East. It needs to be working inside Tennessee. This is the sort of thing that has to stop. No one is willing to stand up and stop it. Frankly, because the Israeli lobby owns the Congress and probably owns many of the governors, for all we know. The bottom line is that what's very concerning at the moment is that this war in Ukraine is not over. Ukraine has no chance to win. It's devastated. They've had 600,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed on the battlefield. Nothing is going to improve until the fighting stops, but no one will stop the fighting because no one in Washington wants to admit that this has been a huge mistake. At the same time, the other issue is the Middle East. We're gearing up for a war with Iran. We're sending thousands of troops into the area in addition to the carrier battle groups, in addition to the 1,000-plus jet fighters and the bombers and Diego Garcia and everywhere else. We're getting ready to attack Iran as soon as Iran responds to the Israeli ground invasion of Lebanon, which is imminent. And when the Israelis move in on the ground, that's when Iran will respond. They cannot do otherwise. We are then going to hurl everything that we have at Iran with the goal of destroying that place. Russia will not sit by and allow that to happen. And even the Turks, who are by no means friendly towards Iran, will be hard-pressed to stay out of this. The entire Muslim world is enraged. Governments in Jordan, Egypt, and elsewhere are going to be swept away. So the point is, we've created chaos in the sense that we're staring into the abyss, and we're prepared to jump into it.
And Putin's already said if we go into Russia, he's nuking people. It's pretty much.
Well, he said that if we persist in these long-range strikes and threaten and kill Russian citizens and attack cities and facilities, that if a nation, whether it's Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, whatever, provides a base from which to attack Russia, they will treat them as co-belligerents. And they are willing to use tactical nuclear weapons. In other words, don't try to hide behind the United States. It's not going to work. And now we're turning on Iran. And as I said, Russia is not going to stand by and allow Iran to be destroyed. It's not going to happen. Neither will the Chinese. All of this hurts us. Remember, we're already dealing with a world that is defecting from us. This thing called BRICS, which is an alternative to the global financial system that we control, is growing by leaps and bounds. There are 84 countries waiting to join it. It's going to be over 100 nations. There are only 132, 133 countries in the world. In other words, the world is walking away from us and our destructive behavior. Someone needs to stand up and say stop. But no one will stop the Israelis from doing what they're doing.
I mean, it sounds like Israel's pretty much calling the shots in this country.
I think they're running it. There's no question about it. They're making all the critical decisions. And I see no evidence that that's going to change regardless of who wins right now.
Wow. Not even Trump, do you think, will have a more balanced policy?
No, in fact, he's made some comments about his readiness to destroy Iran as it is. And I think that's very, very ill-advised. He wants good relations with China and Russia, which is commendable. They should be good. This whole war in Ukraine was our fabrication. But, this notion that Israel has a right to destroy everyone who doesn't agree with them or they don't like is simply not justified.
Now, tell me about what's been going on in Israel. I heard you have a conversation earlier with a gentleman that seemed to be criticizing you, and it seems like you told him some facts that he wasn't aware of. Could you kind of run us through what is happening over there, and what are your thoughts about what's happening over there?
Well, the Israelis are running a campaign of mass murder and expulsion in Gaza. As I've said many times, if the 2 million people in Gaza were Jews, I would object to this mass expulsion and murder program. I can't support it. I've told my friends in Israel the same thing. I don't think that you can solve the problems that Israel thinks it has by murdering your way out of it, by killing your way out of it. I don't see that working. But that's exactly what they're trying to do in Gaza. I think they plan to do it on the West Bank. And now they think the best way to solve everything is to invade Lebanon, because that's the trigger for Iran to attack them, which is what they want, because they see us as riding to their rescue, and then using American military power, we can theoretically solve all their problems for them.
Wow. I mean, America seems like it's on its way to destruction if it hasn't been destroyed already. Okay, and we're all hoping for an America 2.0, right? If you were to say, what is the epitaph on what destroyed this country? What got us this far? If you could summarize why we are at this juncture where we're talking about potential collapse, potential nuclear war, potential end. I mean, we're talking about potential end of the world scenarios.
Well, I think the biggest problem is that most Americans, most of the time, pay very little attention to what happens beyond their borders. That's understandable. But the problem is that allows well-funded minorities to capture your policy-making establishment and to make it do things that otherwise would not. So that's the first problem. Second problem is that we still have too many Americans who are saying, well, the border is trouble, criminality is a problem, but, it hasn't hit my town yet. It hasn't come to my door. It's almost as though until every American is personally affected in some negative way, you can't wake up people to the larger issue. Now, as you point out, we're in a very fragile condition financially. People have been predicting that this fragile economy will collapse at some point. Those who believe debt doesn't matter keep saying, no, party on, print more, don't worry. It sort of reminds me of that song years ago, Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Yeah.
But I think more and more Americans, you have people like Mohammed El-Arian, who's a very brilliant financial analyst, Ray Dalio, Warren Buffett, a whole range of people, very smart people, Gundlach and others, are all saying, look, we're on very thin ice.
Wow.
This could collapse anytime. When that happens, how do we recover?
How do we recover?
It's going to be very tough.
Is it do you feel as though the financial collapse is almost necessary? Because you're saying whether it's Kamala or Trump, which is actually really scary, that whoever's president, we're probably looking at some kind of world conflict war. Trump's also talking about destroying Iran. What is our escape from this? Is a complete financial collapse and a real reset really the only path forward?
The United States is a large and powerful state. But we have seen our national identity, national culture, as well as our national security severely weakened. But I think the American people, the core population that sees itself as American, not part-time American, but American, will in fact rise up. And you're going to see change as a result of that. But unfortunately, like most of the time, real change doesn't occur until there are large numbers of people who suffer. Someone asked me the other day, well, when did the French Revolution begin? And I said, that's easy. It began when the people of Paris could not afford to buy bread.
That's sad, though, Colonel Macgregor. It's really sad that we've seen so much travesty, and now, we had COVID. Finally, people are waking up, when really they should have, I think, woken up when the towers came down. I mean, we should have, or JFK was assassinated. But it seems as though the knife has to dig deep into one's ribs, so to speak, in order for people to actually take action.
Well, I can't speculate on that too much. I think that everyone is focused on this election, and they're hoping that this can be a successful election, that it can be more fair and honest and open than the last one. We'll have to wait and see. But clearly, the election in November is what people normally call a strategic inflection point. What happens after that election depends a great deal on what happens during the election. So we'll have to wait and see.
Last question. What's your prediction about what's going to happen at that election and what comes afterwards?
You know, that's very difficult to know. In many of the so-called swing states, the real question is who votes, who's allowed to step into the voting booth, who fills out the ballots. I oppose all forms of voting other than in-person voting. And remember, the reason we created absentee ballots was during the Civil War. And we wanted to make sure that soldiers serving in the Union Army could vote. Remember, that was a very close election between Lincoln and his opponents, McClellan. And Lincoln ultimately won, largely because the army that was suffering and dying in the field supported him. That made sense. And certainly when I was serving in the armed forces and I was stationed in Europe or the Middle East, I was able to vote with an absentee ballot. That made sense. But simply passing out absentee ballots to anybody who wants one, allowing people to vote online, I don't trust anything that's online under any circumstances. And I think that everyone should have to present evidence of their citizenship and their legal residence. If you can't do that, you don't need to vote.
One last question, actually. You had said a number that I hadn't heard before in terms of the casualties in Israel. Like, could you give us a little bit more description on things that other people would not be aware of because the mainstream hasn't?
I think the popular notion is, first of all, believe whatever the Israelis tell you. The Israelis downplay everything, downplay their own casualties and downplay the damage that they're inflicting on others. So they're talking about 31,000. I've heard some say 38,000 people killed in Gaza. But recently, listening to people from the United Nations, which of course the Israelis immediately discount, as well as the High Commissioner for Refugees and others, they're talking about 189,000 casualties. How many?
10% of the population.
Yeah, which is not unreasonable if you look at the bombing practices. And I've sat and watched all the videotape and seen the horrible, horrific things happen that are not justified. I mean, if I were serving in the field, I would halt the operation immediately and say that borders on a war crime. You know, this is not accidental. You are deliberately killing these people here, here, and here. You have no evidence that they're combatants. This is a terrible situation. And from the beginning, I have feared that Israel was at risk of being destroyed as a result of this. See, I think Israel deserves to survive. I think Israel has been in many ways more positive than negative as a force in the world, has a special role, if for no other reason because of what happened in World War II. But this is now outrageous. This has gone beyond the pale, and I think we should have stepped in and said, you've done enough, no more. And we can work with others to come together with some sort of solution. But the Israeli solution right now looks very Stalinist. It's our way or the highway. Kill everybody that gets in the way. End of discussion. That didn't work very well during the Second World War. I don't think it works very well, period.
Wow. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I really appreciate what you do. And is there anything you want to tell the viewers that we didn't discuss?
Well, no, but if you're interested, go to ourcountry.ourchoice.com. You'll find lots of material there. Also, look into this new free speech platform called Republic. You may want to join that. That's an opportunity to join something that will not result in your cancellation or censorship. The only prohibition on the Republic platform is against people that advocate the overthrow of the United States government or engage in pornography. But you can write what you think. You can post what you see. You can interact. There are tools on there allowing you to contact all the people in your community that hold positions of authority. It's really designed to help Americans take back control of their country. So look at it. It's Republic, RE:public. Look it up. I think you'll like it a lot. And it's $180 a year to be on it for 12 months. But if you go to my website, Google me, there's a code that you can get that'll allow you to get $60 off. So it's only 120. It's well worth the investment.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.